Today, President Trump fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates for refusing to defend his immigration order. Her replacement, Dana Boente, says he will. Meanwhile, the American left remains in meltdown mode with lawsuits appearing all over the country. Jose Antonio Vargas is a journalist and the founder of Define America, a pro-illegal immigrant organization. He himself is also an illegal immigrant, brought over from the Philippines at the age of 12. He's a critic, to put it mildly, of Trump's immigration orders, and he joins us now from Mountain View in California. Jose, it's great to see you tonight. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Actually, I'm in Mountain View, which is where I grew up. This is where I came from the Philippines when I was 12.
In Mountain View, yeah. Mountain View, very nice town. Good for you. Yep. Good choice of towns. So you came over, you said, at 12, and I was thinking about that. I've talked to you many times about this kind of thing. But I thought, you know, what would happen if I showed up in the Philippines as a non-citizen there illegally and started saying, you know, hey, Philippines, I hate your immigration policy. And by the way, I think you're racist for not liking me. And I think maybe I'll file some lawsuits or support other people filing lawsuits against you and, you know, just sort of be quiet and accept my illegal presence. How would they respond to me, do you think?
Well, first of all, I was 12, so I'm not quite sure I would be asking those questions. The decision was made for me. And I think what's really interesting here, too, is, as you probably know, the relationship between the Philippines and the United States, right? Like, you know, the Philippines was a protectorate of the United States, like Puerto Rico. Right? I mean, that's why there's more than 4 million Filipinos in the United States. We're the second largest Asian American group in this country because there's a connection between the two countries. For sure. So I think it's an interesting relationship, and I think
it is, and a very old one, and a very noble one also.
And
I would say.
I have to say, by the way, as someone who's been on Fox News a lot. No, my answer to your question is, as a 12-year-old, I'm not quite sure I would ask those questions. I was not. It was not on my own volition to come here. I was sent here.
Of course it wasn't. Right? But you're not 12 now, and you're making the case in effect that the U.S. doesn't have a right to say to people who are here illegally, you're not allowed to be here.
Has a right. Wait a second. No. The country has a right to define and defend its borders. Absolutely. Any modern country has a right to do that. But at the same time, we have a right to ask harder questions of ourselves about why are people even coming here? Tucker, do you think I came to this country so you can beat me up and call me illegal and criminal on national television? Do you think that's what I want? Don't you think if I could fix... Well, I mean, I'm just saying, when you call me illegal,
you're a gentle soul,
and, when you call people criminals, no, I mean, look, the words matter here. Words matter here. And,
yeah, I believe that.
I mean, look, how do you legalize people you call illegal? You don't. You call them illegal. End of conversation, right?
Well, it's not the end of the conversation. And by the way, I mean, look, you're arguing something that contradicts itself. You're saying a country has a right to have laws about who can be here and who cannot. And you're simultaneously arguing that people here illegally should not be referred to as being here illegally or illegal. Because and I don't really understand what you are arguing.
Wait a second. Being here illegally, being here without documentation and authorization is a civil offense and not a criminal one.
Okay, whatever. It's still against the law. I mean, what's your point?
Wait a second, Tucker. Almost half of the people who are here illegally actually came legally and overstayed their visa, right? They didn't cross the Mexican border. And I have to say, to me, the harder questions we have to ask is...
Okay.
No, these are facts, Tucker. The problem is you don't actually operate in facts. You don't.
I'm actually not contesting. I'm not. Oh, hold on. No, but let me just say, no name calling here. I'm not contesting those as facts.
I'm not calling you names. What did I just call you?
I'm
a journalist. I operate in facts. You're a pundit.
Got that.
There's a difference between the two.
Yeah, I can tell. So, but here's my question to you. What does it have to do with anything? You're not answering my question, which is, if a country has a right to, hold on, if a country has a right to determine who is here and under what circumstances, what are you arguing about? If you're agreeing that a country has a right to determine who has a right to be here, then what's the argument? If you're here illegally, we have a right to tell you to leave, right? What am I missing?
Yes, you do. But wait a second. But why am I here? Why do people come here? Right? What are the root causes of migration? What does U.S. foreign policy and trade agreements have to do with migration patterns? How did NAFTA impact not only the United States, but Mexico? Right? These are the harder questions.
I get your argument. Oh, this is the new argument on the left, which is America has no moral standing to say people can't come here because we've done so many bad things that we deserve the illegal immigration we get.
I'm not going to fall into this whole. I'm not going to fall into this bad thing. I am just trying to make sure that we are fully. We must be fully aware of our own history. I thought that statement from the African Union was really interesting, right? Like, wait a second, so slaves had to build America, but we can't accept refugees? right?
What,
I mean, that's,
I don't,
that's
you know,
a valid question.
you claim to be a journalist. Maybe you could explain, since you're in the explaining business,
Well,
what does
Tucker,
that mean?
I have a Pulitzer.
Because, no, hold
actually,
on.
you know, I actually won a part of a Pulitzer, so I am actually a journalist.
Well, then I'm highly impressed. But because you were a journalist, you're in the business of explaining things. Tell me why, because the United States, like many countries around the world, once had slavery, a grave sin. It doesn't have a right to control who comes across its borders, or it has no right to tell people you can't be here?
I already
what's
agreed
the connection?
with you. Wait,
Unpack it for me.
Wait a second. Tucker, thank you. I absolutely agree with you that a country has a right to define and defend its borders. At the same time...
What does slavery have to do with this? I mean, what are you saying?
Well, why are people here? That was forced migration of people who built
But nobody
this
is
country.
contesting the right of African Americans to be. I don't know. What is your point? I don't understand. You're throwing... Well, America's bad. We had slavery. I agree. That's bad. But what does that have to do with illegal immigration?
Okay. Tucker, you're confused because you don't deal with context. You're confused because I don't think you even really realize the full history and trust of the history of this country. We are here because you were there.
But tell me why it's significant. Tell me what it means. What are you saying, I guess is the point. You're throwing some stuff out. This is not a class. People expect a rational argument from you. And what is it?
What I'm saying is there are reasons why people are coming here. Yes, the country has a right to define and defend its borders, but we need to ask the harder questions of why are they even coming here, Tucker? Like, look,
okay, so I'm asking the question, why are they coming here? But what does that mean? Does that mean that if we answer the question, the answer is we don't have a right to tell them not to come? What?
No,
we're almost out of time. Just tell me what you're saying. Do we have a right or not?
Tucker, here's one answer. You put a sign outside the U.S.-Mexico border that says keep out, then 10 yards in, what do you say? Job wanted. This is a country addicted to cheap labor, always has been. By the way, that's the connection between slavery and what we have now. So while you're trying to criminalize these people, what do you do to all these American employers who are addicted to cheap labor?
The really simple answer is the employers want low-wage immigration. They do. You're absolutely right about that.
Absolutely,
and a lot of other American citizens who aren't benefiting from that or seeing their wages undercut by it aren't in favor of it. So,
well,
but what does that have to do?
Like
I don't get your point.
talking to somebody.
Employers are for it, we have to have it? Like, listen to yourself.
You're talking to somebody, by the way, who's an undocumented entrepreneur who employs people. I employ 14 U.S. citizens in this country.
I want to go to the Philippines and brag about being illegal and see how long I stay out of jail. Maybe you can come with me. We'll try it. Let's say we're out of time.
Am I bragging? Am I bragging here? I'm just stating facts,
You're definitely bragging.
Oh, no, I am stating facts.
Facts. It's a fact bomb. Thanks, Jose. Up ahead, we continue our live coverage of Trump's Supreme Court pick. Is Judge Gorsuch the right man for the job? What's he really like? One of his former Harvard classmates joins us here next. We are, and you know that to be true. I'm not saying most are. I think most are good people, and they want to be here for the right reasons, and I get it. But if you're importing people at your expense, and the U.S. government pays for this, as you know.
We're not paying for asylum seekers to come to the United States.
We're paying for the cost of bearing them once they arrive, as you know.
They don't
and that
really
cost is...
No, I'm not. They're not eligible for any benefit.
Well, they go to public schools, and let me ask you about that. So we have resettled immigrants all over the country, but disproportionately to poor communities for a bunch of different reasons I know you're familiar with. Buffalo is one of them.
Right.
There's a piece today in the New York Post by Betsy McQuaid. It's really interesting. Last decade, 10,000 refugees go to Buffalo. A lot of them wind up at Lafayette High School. 45 languages spoken there. 70% of the students are just learning English.
Right.
Now, this is one of the worst schools in the state of New York. 14% of people graduate on time. This is a massive burden for the school. It doesn't help the people who are already there. The obvious question is, why aren't we resettling them in places where people support refugee resettlement, like Chevy Chase, Maryland, or Beverly Hills, California? Because people don't want to bear the cost of the policies they support.
Refugees are resettled in communities that do voluntarily accept them. The government does not force refugees in communities. So, in general, as I said earlier, communities that receive refugees generally are asking for them, are benefiting from them, and are very happy to have them there.
So if you had a child,
for example,
right? Come on, if you had a child at a school that all of a sudden became half immigrant, non-English speaking. I don't care if every one of those kids is smart and disciplined and hardworking. That's a massive cost.
You know what? I'm really glad you said that, Tucker, because my kids do go to a school like that.
What percentage non-English speaking is that?
I don't know, but there are a lot. They have several kids in their class.
Well, then you know it's a high cost to the school. It is. And why not acknowledge that?
And the community, well, it is a cost to the school, but the community that I'm in and that my children go to school in is welcoming of those kids. They're happy to have it. Parents volunteer and work with them. The kids learn a lot from having this diverse cultures in their classes. And overall, I would say that it's a positive thing.
Well,
I'm not
denying
it's a cost.
Both of us live in one of the most affluent areas in the country. Here's my point, and this is, I guess, what bothers me. There's an unfairness for affluent people like us to turn to the rest of the country and say, you're bigots for not supporting the resettlement of people who don't speak our language, don't share our culture, and whose costs we will pay for, you're a bad person if you're not for that.
I don't think I've ever called anybody a bigot.
But isn't the position on Trump's executive orders that anyone who's for this is motivated by bigotry or dislike of the other? And that's not a fair thing to say.
Well, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that receiving refugees and welcoming refugees in what I believe is an American tradition is something that I'm very proud of as an American.
Right.
It's something that I don't like to see turned its back on. And that's, I mean, that's my point, really.
Let me ask you one last question then, and it's about assimilation. So some of these are people who already share our values and are familiar with our country, but many of them are not, and they're coming from places whose values are not just different from ours, but opposed to ours. They don't believe in an open liberal society, and I've got a lot of data to back it up. Okay, what are we doing when we import someone from a country where 98% of the women have experienced genital mutilation, for example, and people don't believe that men and women are equal, they hate gays? What are we doing to bring them in to our culture and to convince them that our values are the right values? I don't see that we're doing much.
Actually, I think we are. I think that's one of the great things about America. I think that you will see that it takes one generation or less for people to really become assimilated. And in fact, studies are showing that recent immigrants are actually assimilating much quicker than they did in the past.
So what percentage?
They learn English. They have American friends. They adopt American, social norms and cultural experiences.
So what percentage of immigrant families from, say, Somalia, where there's a 98% occurrence of female genital mutilation, practice that on their daughters in the United States?
I have no idea.
Do you think it would be interesting to know?
Sure, and maybe there's a study out there that says it, but I don't know what it is, right? But my experience has been that when I speak to Somali young women who have immigrated to this country or whose parents have immigrated to this country, they are very American to me.
But do you tell them that that's wrong?
Well, I haven't had that conversation with very many of them, but many
why not?
I have had that conversation with some of them. Look, we worked on, I was at the Board of Immigration Appeals at the Department of Justice at the time when the famous FGM case came up.
I remember.
And a lot of people were arguing that FGM is not a practice that is acceptable, especially by force, right?
Well, it's illegal, among other things, but it still continues, and I just wish we would take a stand.
I don't
for
know
our
what
own
the rates
values.
are in the U.S. I don't have any problem with that.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining us, Michelle.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Make our bodies go, make our bodies high.